Hello, this is a 1 month update to my Enzo pk70 pocket knife. This is my own personal knife. I'm not sponsored in any way, and this is my personal opinion on the knife. So inside the carton box you have the knife in a bubble pouch, and you have literature. So if you care about this, please pause and read it. Otherwise, I'll just try to get this out of the way as quickly as possible. There we go. So the knife itself, I selected the green micarta version of the knife. It also comes in G10, black G10, and a bolstered black G10. Bolstered meaning the top section is going to have a titanium slab and the lower is going to be G10. The fit and finish on this guy is fantastic. So the knife is finished design using American CPM S30 V blade steel, and then it's actually built in Taichung, Taiwan. So that is an important name since Taichung, Taiwan is where a lot of the higher end Spyderco knives and a few other manufacturers will build their knives out of. So when something's just stamped made in Taiwan, it's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but when it's Taichung, Taiwan, it's a very good thing. So this knife, it's has a it's a slip joint knife, 2-hand opening. So I do need to use the nail neck. There's a 50% stop, and then you have your fully open position. Closing it, the 50% stop hasn't worn out, so it does stop quite good. I don't have to worry about it cutting my hand open, and it's very easy to close with one hand. The knife itself also has a single strand lanyard hole for paracord. Deep carry pocket clip with the screws are recessed on the new models. The original runs of these guys had screws that were a bit proud. So by that I mean, here's a Manly Wasp. If you look at this guy, you can see that the screw is actually just sitting on top of the metal there. And it's just extra that you have to force the knife over when you're trying to get it to seat fully in your pocket. So that they removed that on the future editions or the newer editions of this knife is a great thing. Other than that, the micarta is polished and it's also contoured. So what I mean by contouring is there's a bit of a hump in the material here. If you're comparing that to other G10 knives, like this is a Spyderco Manix, typically what you'll get on a G10 knife is that it's going to be chamfered around the edges, but then it's still just a flat, boring slab of G10. Same thing with like my Manly Wasp and all my other knives that are like that. Whereas this guy, it has it's a polished material, so it's quite a bit nicer in the hand, and the contouring of it, it just makes it nicer. It's for me personally, I get a bit more positive grip on that guy, and my hand is about a size 9.5 glove. I just completely envelop the grip, so when the blade is extended, it's just the blade sticking out. I don't have any butt sticking out, and I just have a nice working blade. Other things I like about this, so we talked about the hole, the clip. If you take a look inside there, you can see there is a pin there. That pin is a stop pin that makes contact with the base of the blade stock. So when the knife is closing, it'll make contact with that pin and prevent any over travel. Over travel meaning that on some slip joints, because it's just a spring bar here, you can keep pushing the blade down on a slip joint and make it contact the spring bar or any other mechanisms inside of that. So the stop pin, this is a Spyderco Military. You can see that there's a large pin there. Basically, when the knife is closing, it'll make contact and it stops the knife from going more that way. And yeah, it's different for the opening on a slip joint, but for the closing, having a stop pin there on the inside of a slip joint is fantastic. It's a more modern design compared to like a more traditional slip joint. This is the Manly Wasp. It's an older model of the Manly Wasp. The newer models, they fix the internal geometry so it won't have this problem, but the older versions have a bit of rock. So if I press gently here, you can hear that the blade is actually moving and bottoming out and making contact with, internally there's a small hump where the pivot is. The pivot screw goes through and there's a small hump there. And if you look at the blade, there's actually a chip about halfway up the blade from the blade contacting the bump. So in the newer Wasps, that's been resolved. And in this knife, it'll never be an issue because of the way that they designed the internals of this knife. So that's fantastic design. So there's a knife, it comes in the 3 materials, the G10, the micarta, and the Bolster G10. It also comes in 2 different blades. This is a CPM S30 V steel. In the Scandi grind version, it also comes in a full flat grind. The full flat grind looks like this. This is the Enzo Necker. This is the fixed blade version of this knife. This one is made in Taichung, Taiwan. This guy is made in Finland. And this guy has a, you can see the glinting on the blade there. That is the micro bevel or the secondary bevel. So that is the actual bit that's going to start the cut. And then this very long grind is what's going to, it makes a very acute angle, so it will slice through materials very nicely. The Scandi grind is a bit fatter, so you have the full blade stock, and then this guy starts here and goes all the way to a 0-degree bevel. So there is no micro bevel on this. I emailed with Barisa to confirm. There is no micro bevel on this, meaning that this guy goes from this all the way to 0 here, and this is your cutting edge, meaning you get a lot more steel behind this guy in theory, and it should be a bit more stable compared to the more acute micro bevel on a full flat grind. So if you're doing things like woodworking, it should be better, should be. So this is my first Scandi grind pocket knife, and I was a bit ignorant of how to maintain these guys. So talking with Barisa and looking at a few YouTube videos, basically you take your knife and you would just pop it up, and you would pull the knife on that angle. So this is actually your sharpening degree, and you would have to just pull it back. No need for using Sharpie to find your degree out, and just sharpen that way. So again, imagining this is a stone, not a book. So that's how you would maintain that. Regarding metallurgy and chipping and things like that, I have had a bunch of chipping on this knife, but they were user errors. I had a bunch of chipping right up front around this the belly there, and that was from using the knife. I pushed through wood a bit too aggressively, and I smacked into the concrete floor. That caused a bunch of chatter up front, so several small microchips in a cluster. Then in the rear, I was a bit too aggressive, prying off a bit of wood I was working near a knot, and that caused a little bit of a chip right in the rear. So I am not a good sharpener. I am a very novice sharpener, but I was able to, if I start the cut, just pulling it through. And by doing that, what I'm trying to show is that I can start this, keeping the knife stationary, pull the paper across the entire length of the blade, and there aren't any snags or tears occurring. So it's quite a nice blade, easy to maintain even for a novice like me. So I'm very pleased that, again, a novice sharpener, I was able to maintain my tool without any issues. So that's great. I was able to, so again, there's a difference between sharpening and honing. I was able to actually sharpen this, remove material, reestablish the edge, and then polish it off. I used a 400 grit to get the chips out, and a 1000 grit to get it to where it is now. So that's that. If you got the full grind version, again, this is not a sharpening video, it's just my experience. I absolutely love this knife, how easy it was for me to maintain it. It looks like, doesn't look great, but if I get some stropping paste and a strop, I could get a very nice mirror on that guy. So that's the quick overview of the knife and my use so far. So comparing this guy to a full flat grind knife, I found that using it on cardboard, if you're using this to like tear down boxes, if I'm going with the material, I find that it needs a little bit more force. It does, again, because it's doing the bigger, more oblique angle, it's causing a bit of wedging, and I do need to push a bit harder through the material than it would on a full flat grind knife. And same thing if I'm going against all this material. It's the same kind of thing where I do need to put a bit of effort into it. I did find that instead of going perpendicular to the material, if I just drop the angle of attack, I can get this guy to cut as easily as a full flat grind knife. And that just, again, comes down to the geometry of the blade. It's not better or worse, it's just different than full flat grind. And if you don't have a Scandi grind folding knife, I think that this is an amazing knife for that. I'm so impressed with this little guy, the pk70. I picked up the big brother. This is the Borka 90. This one's actually made in Italy, not in the Taichung, Taiwan factory. And there's a middle knife that would go here. This is the Borka 75, which is the liner lock version of this knife out of the Taichung factory. So that's the family of knives that they have. And there's also the necker that would go kind of at the bottom here. So they have the necker, PK, the pk70 V, and then Borca's the big boy out of Italy. So I like this knife enough that I went out and spent more of my own money to acquire a few more Enzo knives to play around with, and I just love them. So versus cardboard, it's very nice. And then versus wood, this is just a scrap of 2x2 I've been playing with, and so just using the knife, it's effortless to get curls of wood off this. I'm going to put a link in the description of my use of this knife. So using this in 1 month, what have I been doing? I have been basically tearing down any sort of boxes I can find around the house, any sort of tasks for opening, cleaning up, and woodworking, like just small whittling tasks. I haven't had any gardening use. So in my Manly Wasp video, I did a bunch of gardening use on this, and I was digging with the Manly Wasp and getting a bunch of use that way and seeing how the blade held up for that, I guess, abuse. But this guy wasn't able to do that. So for this guy, what I did was I took a 1 inch thick by 6 inches wide cedar board, and I basically planed it down to nothing. I have a rather large mound of scrap material in my basement from putting this knife through its paces. So it wasn't just like in my pocket I'd open up or cut a sandwich or something. This was doing a lot of work. Many hours have been putting into mostly woodwork on this guy. When working on wood, it maintains the edge very well. Working on cardboard, I found I needed to hone this knife. So not sharpen, but hone. I need to polish it up. After a couple of days, like maybe 2 days of tearing down boxes, I'd need to polish this guy up. Whereas the full flat grinds, they would go a little bit longer than this guy did. So that's it for those. For comparisons on size, it's a very nice small knife. So comparing it to the other Enzos doesn't really help if you are looking at this video to acquire your first Enzo. This is a Spyderco Delica. It's kind of the staple knife for reviews where everyone has a Delica. So this is how the knife compares to a Delica, going from kind of the pivot to pivot. The handle's quite a bit shorter, the blade's quite a bit shorter, and it's the thickness as well. It's comparable in thickness, but it is a smaller knife. It's also the form factor of the knife in pocket. It's a very nice rectangle shape, and it just hangs very nicely in the pocket. It's very pleasant. With some pants here. So getting this in the pocket is very easy, especially since it's a polished material. Getting it in the pocket is very easy. The retention is okay, as long as you're not trying to do acrobatics. So it unclipped there. As long as you're not trying to do acrobatics like walking on your hands or front flips, this guy will stay in there if you prefer upright bipedal motion. So that's quite good retention. It's easy to get in and out of the pocket. It's not overdone. Stuff like the Spyderco Manix, the very grippy G10 with this, this has a lot more contact area than this knife. The Manix is a bit of a chore to put in and out, and you do need this little thumb tap to help get the Manix or the Delica out. This guy, despite being a deep carry, one of the knocks against the deep carry is that it's hard to get out when you need it. The way that this guy's done, it's been done quite well, and it's easy to get in and out of the pocket. So there's no faults on that at all. Other comparisons I can do, so I did the Delica comparison, and then the other comparison would be, this is my favorite knife. This is the Spyderco Hungarian, and this is the Spyderco Little Velton Subhill. So why am I mentioning these knives? These two knives are $300 Canadian. The Enzo is $170 Canadian. So you're going from $300 knives to $170 knives, but it's made by the same people in the Taichung, Taiwan factory. So it's significantly better bang for the buck. You're getting the same finishing on the material with the polished work, the contouring on the handles, and these guys have the bolster work as well. So you're getting the same kind of detail, and you're paying a lot less because you're not paying for the spider and you're not paying for the maker marks. With Enzo, you're getting more of just what matters, and that's just having a well-built knife that'll last you. So I am very pleased with this acquisition, so much so that I bought extra Enzo knives, and I highly recommend this. Going from a cheaper knife like a Kershaw or a Manly to this, what are you getting? And you really are just getting that fit and finish where I have not, I love this knife, but I have not babied this knife. It does get knocked around, throw it into the little drawer when I'm done at the end of the day. It does hold up. There is no slop in the blade at all. When it's open, there's no play side to side in the blade. It's holding together very well. This thing's built like a tank, and it's going to keep going for a significantly longer period of time. The only knock I really have against this knife, and that's true of most pocket knives, is that it does rub. It has a pocket clip, and pocket clips rub. If you're bearing down in a hammer grip, pushing through material for a long period of time, this pocket clip did tear up my hand a little bit, and that's just what happens. It's the only way to really resolve that is to get rid of the pocket clip. So that's a bit of a moot point at that point. Other than that, I absolutely love this knife. Big pluses are the easiness to maintain a Scandi grind. Super pleased with that. And just, yeah, working on wood, this guy is a demon through wood. Cardboard boxes, other things like that, I do prefer things like my Spyderco Hungarian. I prefer that more acute angle for just day-to-day EDC kind of task, but if I want to do some more heavier work, I do find I prefer the Enzo. So that's my quick 1 month review. It's a fantastic knife. I absolutely love it, and it's currently my #1 slip joint knife that I have in my collection. So thanks for your time. Take care. Bye.